or night, in every season, in Kentucky, anglers escape the daily pressures by catching fish. At the end of a day's labor, there is still time to fish in Kentucky. If it rains, go fishing anyhow. The fish seem not to mind the weather, and neither does the angler, as long as he's catching crappie such as this one. Or with summer and fall gone, you can go ice fishing for bluegills. And following the winter come the long days of summer. But whenever you fish in Kentucky, the largemouth bass is always a prize. Kentucky is famous for its bass fishing, and with good reason. Beginner and old-timer alike catch bragging-sized bass faster than they might have believed possible, because this is truly the land of the black bass, historic home of the fish which is popular everywhere. Kentucky anglers use every method ever invented for catching bass, but none brings in more big bass than jig fishing, a style of fishing invented by Kentuckians. Jig fishing may start in January and last through redbud time. What bait is best? Jig fishermen offer bass a tempting smorgasbord. The original bait was night crawlers. Half a dozen of them dangle from a treble hook, and this is still the favorite. But now anglers also offer spring lizards or salamanders, baits with nylon skirts, and minnows. Whatever the bait, keep it jigging up and down 18 to 30 inches below the surface. Cane poles and 40-pound test line are standard equipment. And all the time, the jig fisherman silently sculls his boat to avoid banging against shores, stumps, or rocks, and alerting the wary largemouth. Meanwhile, a 5, 6, 8, or even 10-pounder may be bearing down on the bait. There's action ahead. Score one more for Kentucky jig fishing. The best places for jig fishing are back in the coves at the base of clear-running falls, around submerged brush and old logs, and rocky undercut banks. Flooded briar patches, once favored by Kentucky cottontails, now provide choice spring housing for big bass. This medium-sized jig fishing prize weighs 2.5 pounds. Just right for supper. And on a string of fish such as this, he merits having his portrait made. Kentucky still has its wilderness atmosphere, but after a day of fishing, the angler may return to the solid comfort of accommodations such as Lure Lodge or cabins on a high point overlooking the deep green fishing waters of Lake Cumberland, where the worries of the world seem far away. Everywhere in Kentucky, the story is the same: good fishing and good living. What is more famous than Kentucky fishing? Unless it's Kentucky's Southern-style cooking, especially for sunrise breakfast far above the beckoning lake. There's a world of water for your boat, plus hard-surface launching areas, service, meals, and bait at marinas such as this one on Lake Cumberland. Green timbered slopes, home of deer, grouse, and wild turkeys, form countless coves which entice exploring boaters who can stop to fish when they like, or camp at the day's end. Beneath their leafy green canopy, Kentucky's highways and country lanes lead to endless adventures along the edge of a lake, across a twisting stream, past neat horse farms, or to some secluded farm pond where you select just the right bass bait. What would bass want for lunch today? Perhaps a yellow popping bug with big eyes and wiggly rubber legs, which is quickly tied to the monofilament with a few deft motions. Then quietly drop the bait and work it slowly in the quiet waters to the tune of country music from the meadowlark. And the redwing, in his bandmaster's coat, joins in harmony. while Mama Killdeer nervously guards the 4 treasures she placed together on a bare spot in the meadow. But the summer day is filled with more than bird music. Bass are out hunting. Waiter, bring on the dragonfly. But the main course is frog legs. My compliments to the chef. Dessert, yellow with wobbly legs. No, take it back, waiter. And forget what I said about the chef. I wish I could spit it out. This is getting serious. Only us Kentucky bass jump like this. I'll show this wise guy he's got his hands full. Tied to a fighting bass like this, the angler has no choice. He gives him line. At the peak of each leap, the angler skillfully tips his fish off balance. A few final dashes, the end of a magnificent fight. The fisherman has forgotten time and troubles. The fighting bass commanded his full attention. There's no time for worry when you're bass fishing in Kentucky. Farm pond neighbors of the largemouth bass are the scrappy bluegills, bantamweight champions of the fly rod clan. Biologists tell us that in Kentucky's productive waters, it is impossible to take too many bluegills from a pond. The more you catch, the better the fishing. Good news for all, except perhaps the bluegill. This fisherman, happily weighted down with largemouth bass and plate-sized bluegills, needs no excuses at home tonight. He's had a good day, and the proof is on the stringer. And don't think you have to be a seasoned old-timer or decked out in fancy garb from Abercrombie & Fitch to catch fish in Kentucky. The cane pole will do the same job, and in the process, instill in the boy or girl a lifelong fishing fever. Here's a 2-pounder even Dad could be proud of. Is that where they are? Says Sis, out around the brush. You catch 'em like this? Hey, this fishing's great. It's nothing to catching fish. Would somebody... No, you mean I have to bait my own hook? If you must, you must. Afraid of worms? Why, child, your great-grandmother fit the engines. When the bait touches the water, a dozen bluegills are waiting for seconds, and there's a frantic race to be first at the table. This one wins, or loses. Bobber watching is serious business. Hey, it's moving. No bobber does that by itself. Something's down there pulling it. Could be a bass or bluegill. We'll solve that mystery. And Dad already is glad he took this day off for fishing with his boys. Little brother has no monopoly. There are bluegills for everyone. Some of Kentucky's best bluegill water is state-owned Shanty Hollow Lake near Bowling Green. But that's no bluegill, that's a bass. And it looks like he's going to splash all the water out of the lake and not let anyone break him to lead. But this lad handles him like a veteran. It's your fish, says Dad. You land him. Okay, I will. Hey, you hungry? I know where there's some apples. Why, they're in here thickest bluegills down in the pond. This is a bountiful land, Kentucky, with lakes and streams as rich in fish as in Daniel Boone's day. A land of good living and wonderful times to remember. And when young bass fishermen graduate from farm ponds to big waters, there are Lake Cumberland, Dale Hollow, Kentucky, Harrington, and many more. Real testing grounds for the serious angler's skill. Bass big enough to scare you are there and waiting in any season, from Christmas Day through spring and summer and into autumn's carnival setting. A man and his boy occupy a world of their own on a Kentucky canoeing stream. This is Elkhorn Creek, once favorite fishing waters of Dr. Edward Henshaw, the father of bass fishing. Descendants of bass he caught must still occupy these glistening pools. A seine in the riffles will collect the bait. There are minnows, crawfish, and hellgrammites, all good bait for smallmouth bass. Ugly, perhaps, but hellgrammites are irresistible to bass. Beach the canoe and wade for the fish. Father limbers up his fly rod while son puts the spinning rod to work. Move in quietly, no stumbling, no commotion. Be ready. Times may have changed since Dr. Henshaw fished here, but the leaping, surging, fighting pattern of Kentucky smallmouth bass is still the same. And one of them grew to world record size, 11 pounds and 15 ounces. This one won't break records, but he'll provide the main course at the afternoon campfire. The spinning outfit works equally well in the hands of an expert such as this youth. Try 6-pound test line and live or artificial baits. Watch out for those leaps. Take up the slack line. Don't rush a smallmouth. Give him time to wear down and feed him line if he demands it. Pretty soon, he's coming your way. In such streams, you never know what will strike your bait. Husky rock bass living under the stone ledges, sunfish, even a channel cat. There, Dad, add him to the supper supplies. Pauses at choice pools mark the highlights of any canoe trip. Here a man takes his food where his ancestors found it. Home for tonight is far removed from civilization's pressures. What more could a man and boy ask? What's for chow? Fish. Very fresh fish. Build a bed of glowing coals for the best cooking fire. If you want fish without the bones, clean them the easy way. Fillet them. Dip in cornmeal and skillet fry fast in deep fat over a hot fire. Not bad. If Mama knew what a hot-shot cook I am, I'd never get out of the kitchen. A leisurely supper beside the stream makes the perfect ending to a day's canoeing. Next morning, there's adventure ahead, and father and son are stirring early. Now we'll find out what's around the next bend and the one after. Perpetual lure of the canoe traveler on Kentucky waterways. Here in the Dix River, myriads of white bass or stripes come to lay their eggs in the spring. Temperature is the key to their spawning, which begins when water reaches 60 degrees. And with the river full of fish, fishermen also school up. There are enough stripes for everyone and some left over. Spinning equipment is the most common, but all kinds of tackle catch white bass. For bait, there are small spinners, spoons, and bucktail jigs in bright hues. But the favorite is minnows, the natural food of foraging white bass. The white bass lives a frantic, fast-paced life. Few ever reach 4 years of age. The average size is 1.5 pounds, but once in a while, there's a 4-pounder. No matter how many are caught, there are more to fill their places, because the female drops 500,000 or more free-floating eggs. When she is done with this chore, she returns to the lake. The limits are liberal. And if you like night fishing on Kentucky's big lakes, hang a row of lanterns over the side of your boat. Light attracts the insects, which bring the shad, which attract the white bass. a system that works best in midsummer when nights are comfortable and fishing is fast. Bait carefully, wait patiently, and then wham! One wild-eyed white bass tangles the works like an amateur weaver who doesn't know his woof from his warp. Or for frenzied action, fish the jumps, where schools of slashing white bass feed on surfacing shad in daytime. Meanwhile, down among the sunken stumps, the always popular crappies move casually through their watery world. In Kentucky, everyone, just everyone, catches large, economy-sized crappie. Well, almost everyone. Crappie fishing is family sport. One way in this busy world for the entire family to have fun together. Careful, crappie. Somebody up there is plotting a campaign against you. Typical crappie fisherman's rig has split-shot sinker and adjustable bobber. Favorite bait among fishermen, because it's a favorite among crappies, is the minnow. Fancy rod? Yes. Or an old-fashioned cane pole. Is there a fish down there? Will he take the bait? Maybe he's asleep. Not these ever-alert Kentucky crappies, and especially not during the famous Maytime crappie run at Kentucky Lake. Finest moment of all is when the child catches a fish, especially with mother as a witness. The live net will hold that one, but just barely. Meanwhile, Mom decides it may be her turn. Sure enough, there are crappies for everyone. Kentucky has both white and black crappies. Most common are the white variety, but they live together with their kinfolk in all the state's big lakes and rivers. One more for the live net and one more for supper. Mom, you caught the biggest one of all. He weighs 2.5 pounds. And for once, Mom is speechless. Here's another favorite bait among Kentucky crappie experts. Brightly colored lead head jigs, mostly homemade. Adjust the bobber with a bobber stop to keep the jig off the bottom and tie the jig on securely. When crappie fishing from a boat, cast the bait to flooded brush piles and stumps. And there is seldom long to wait. By jigging the rod tip, you can give the bait added action to attract crappie attention. Some crappie fishermen know where to fish because they have marked locations of submerged brush piles and stumps when the water was low. Below Kentucky Dam, warm weather brings the catfishing armada to challenge the legions of blue catfish. Fishing boats scoot like water beetles around the boils where catfish live on shad chopped up by the turbines. You maneuver like dodgem cars in the amusement park. Drop your weighted bait and buck the unpredictable current. Shad by the millions tempt the blue cats, and fishermen scoop bushels of these fish into their boats for bait. Put away the flimsy tackle. Use a short, stubby rod and reel. Once you've hooked a catfish, lay the tackle down and hand line him into the boat. Some people insist these Tennessee River catfish conduct tackle breaking contests and have river bottom trophy rooms decorated with tons of hooks and sinkers. So abundant are big catfish here that these boys, when free from school, sell their catch at a profit. All this and rough water adventure too. And still, there are catfish by the thousands, some too big to fit in a gunny sack. Use one hand for the catfish, the other for the boat. This fishing hole yields hundreds of thousands of pounds of fish a year. But there's a relaxed way to go catfishing. This Kentucky River trot line fisherman needs no fancy equipment, and if he had it, he would just have to take care of it. Hand over hand, he pulls himself to the fish. In this case, it's a channel cat that made the mistake of having dough balls for a midnight snack. And he gets his own Pullman berth for the trip back to the dock. Like any fisherman, the trotliner never knows what's coming next. The buffalo may be extinct in Kentucky, but not the buffalo fish. This one has good commercial value, so the fish is slid into the net and brought into the same boat that has hauled countless numbers of his ancestors to market. Move over, Channel Cat. There's a buffalo coming aboard. His daily treasure hunt completed, the relaxed trotliner heads back to his dock, skirting the green banks of the river where one day is like the next and the fishing uncomplicated. The catch goes into the live box to await the market day. Though a few fish commercially, most trotliners fish for fun. For an unusual fishing trip in Kentucky streams or lakes, try for the primitive garfish. On light spinning tackle, this acrobat tests the nerves of man or boy. From the moment he's hooked, the gar's performance is filled with surprises. Let the spring of the rod do the work. Like a creature bypassed by evolution, the garfish, with his horny scales and strange-looking head, traces his ancestry back to an age before the dinosaurs. A violent fighter, this rocket-shaped fish can wear out an angler or threaten his rod, but he never gives up. Until brought to the boat and given the coup de grace with a billy club dad fashioned from the butt end of a boat oar. Use wire leader and drift chunks of beef or cut fish. Then be alert. You never know when a savage garfish will grab that bait. Give him time to run, then set the hook, and you're engaged in fishing as exciting as you'll find anywhere. The prize? A fish as long as the fisherman is tall. Another mean-tempered character dwelling in Kentucky streams is the muskellunge, the most coveted of all Kentucky's trophy fish. This savage dwells in such streams as Kinnickinnick Creek and Green River and is caught by fishermen casting large artificial baits near banks and logs. Kentucky is trout fishing country too, with 500 miles of waters cold enough for these beauties. Clear, tumbling woodland streams such as Rock Creek, where the song of the tanager and wood thrush add their music to the wild settings, are best. Search out the riffles. Trout lie in the pools below. Offer them either live baits or artificials. Kentucky trout fishermen believe in comfort. Age-old traditions of waders, landing nets, and fancy creels have not caught up with this newest Kentucky fishing. Rainbows 9 to 11 inches long are being stocked in more Kentucky waters each year. They are being placed by the thousands in such streams as Sinking Creek, Rough River below the Rough River Dam, Brushy Creek, Trammell Creek, Cumberland River, as well as in some of the larger lakes where cold, deep waters fit their needs. over 100,000 have been stocked in Lake Cumberland in 1 year. Here's a rainbow to fit the skillet. Nowhere in the world of fishing will you find a prettier string of trout than these bluegrass rainbows. Below Wolf Creek Dam, trout fishermen float to the trout, drift with the current 1 day, 2 days. For 60 miles, there are trout in these waters. Or you can fish from the bank and know you're close to fighting rainbows. No fancy fly for these trout. Kentucky anglers know that trout like marshmallows for dessert. And when the marshmallows are gone, bait with grains of yellow corn, another favorite catfish bait that tempts trout as well. Trout can also be taken on artificial baits, such as this spoon. Cast below or beside the swift waters where trout lie waiting for natural foods to come into range. Catching rainbows demands concentration as well as skill and a bit of luck. The rainbow is a strong, hard-fighting game fish, well established now in many Kentucky waters. Rainbows have a knack for breaking lines, so take it easy on the pressure. Work him carefully. When he's worn down, lead him to the net. The contest between man and fish is ended. It's the same exciting, wonderful climax shared by all fishermen. And it happens every day in Kentucky. Whether it's bass, crappies, catfish, garfish, muskies, or trout you want to catch, try Kentucky waters. But plan to stay a spell, because Kentucky has more good fishing holes than you can visit in a lifetime. So why not fish in Kentucky any day?